All right, so one of the things I think about after I read poetry is then how can I, as a writer, write some poetry too? And so today we're just going to start thinking about where does poetry hide in our own life? I think about the examples that we just read. Poetry hides in baseball, right? So I'm just going to add that word baseball because for me, there is some poetry. I could imagine Jacob pitching. My son, who's in seventh grade, he's a pretty good pitcher. So I could imagine there being some poetry that I could write about Jacob pitching, or maybe there's some poetry around like kicking a soccer goal. Or maybe you don't play sports, but you can imagine some kind of poetry around one of the activities that you do. Maybe it's dancing in a recital, or maybe it's some other kind of thing that you do. So go ahead and jot a couple of ideas down about how you could, or what you could imagine, what actions in your life you could imagine writing some poetry about. I really like to ride like a Peloton bike. So I could imagine writing something about spinning on my bike. Maybe you like to ride your bike. I loved to ride my bike when I was in fifth grade. So maybe it's just something that you love doing, like riding your bike or shooting hoops in the driveway or swinging or playing foursquare. So go ahead and write a couple of ideas down in your notebook of actions. And I'm going to title this part of our thinking actions. Because like the base dealer, we might think about actions that we like. The other thing that the broccoli poem made me think of was food. And definitely I could write about food I don't like, right? And so I don't know about you, but I'm not crazy about liver and onions, although I've never actually tried it. I used to not like Brussels sprouts, but then my brother-in-law made them with bacon, and so now I love them. And so I could talk about how I went from like not liking them to loving them, right? So maybe I could write about that journey of Brussels sprouts somehow. Or I could think about other foods that I definitely do not like. I'm sorry to say, but I do not like onions. And if they accidentally touch my food, it kind of ruins it for me. As I get older, I'm better at it, but they're not my favorite. So maybe there are other foods that you don't like. But then I could definitely write about foods that I do like. My favorite food, if you can believe this, is pot roast. Have you ever had a pot roast? It's so yummy, especially when it cooks all day and it makes your house smell really good. I could also write about pizza. And I could maybe write about ice cream, and specifically because my kids my twins just had their 13th birthday, and they love it when I make an ice cream cake. So I could write about ice cream cake. So we could write about some foods, right? We could also write about people. We didn't read any poems about people, but we know that we could write about some people. So who are some people that you could maybe jot down in your list? I could write about my sisters and how we fight all the time. I could write about my kids and how they fight all the time. I could write about my mom and my dad. I could write about my husband. I could write about all kinds of people. I could write about my neighbors. Another thing that I know that sometimes we can write about are pets, right? I don't have any pets at my house, although we are hoping that we can get a dog pretty soon. So I could write about maybe a dog. Oh, we do have fish. So maybe I could write about our fish. Bubbles is one of the fish's name. I could write about Rex, my neighbor's dog, and how much I love Rex. He's like the nicest little dog in the world. And so there's lots of different things that we could write about, right? So go ahead and take a couple minutes and add some things to your list that you could write about. And then I'm going to ask you to take a picture of your page that's titled Where Does Poetry Hide? And to share that with me so we can see all the really cool ideas of what everybody is writing about. All right. Thanks so much for sharing, friends.